I always have nose problems when I go live on camera. I start sniffling and scratching my nose, and I don't know what it is. You'd think I was
Nerves.
allergic to live. Sorry, everybody tuning in. We just went live, and my nose went right into gear. I want to welcome today my dear friends, Mascha and Nancy. Mascha from Musings by Mascha, and Nancy from Nancy Texas Rose, and of course, yours truly, Robin from Toadstool Tarot. And I had an idea a while back that, well, people do different kinds of videos and talks, chats on their channels. And I hadn't done one like this, and I hadn't really seen any, but there probably are some out there about past life regression, but I was intrigued by it because I've gone through it before, and I wanted to reach out to fellow channel hosts to see who of them might have experienced past life regression. Now, we were to be joined by a fourth member, Chris Yao, but I have to make his excuses. He had a family situation and had to back out at the last minute. And we wish him well, and that all that is taken care of. And maybe we'll get together with him another time. But in the meantime, I have the lovely Mascha and Nancy. And I'm going to say hello to Lucian at Cross Paths, and Dave, if he's there with him, and Chris, Elemental Cartomancy, Jen or Hen at Jen Science to Soul Tarot. And I think that's about it. Now, I'm only looking at the chat from StreamYard, which I think has a 20-second delay. So if either of you are following it in YouTube, you might see comments earlier than I do, and feel welcome to shout them out. But otherwise, I'm content to let them come in as they do. So we might as well get started. Oh, first of all, does everybody have a tea or a beverage with them today? And what are you drinking?
I've got my red tea from Taiwan, ruby red tea. Taiwanese. Beautiful. It's really lovely in the morning. So it's 8 o'clock in the morning here where I am.
Is that like a fruity flavor or a rich dark flavor, or what kind of flavor is red tea?
Red tea, it's more, well, you know, what's in the West generally referred as black tea is actually really red tea. So it's kind of in my school of tea, it's more, I guess you look at the color of the tea more than anything to determine. So this one, yeah, so that's how it is. It's just plain organic red tea from Taiwan, and it's a whole leaf one. So
okay.
Yeah.
I want to welcome in Sage Advice and Susan of Light and Shadow. And we'll move on. Nancy, what are you drinking today?
Well, mine is very simple. I'm having jasmine green tea.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Oh, we all three of us have sort of slightly exotic teas. I have violet black tea, which is my favorite. I first discovered it on a trip to the south of France in the late 80s in this little tea shop there. And it's a black tea with violet flowers in it, which I had trouble finding when I got back to the States, because the health stores have violet tea, but that's like stems or leaves or something, which doesn't have the fragrance of the flowers. And the flowered tea has that kind of aroma of like Granny's perfume, you know, or the violet candies that you can get, the little lozenges. And it's just so heady and dreamy. I love it. But I did locate an online vendor in Massachusetts called Simpson and Vale that has quite an extensive catalog and a array of dozens of different kinds of teas, and I highly recommend them. So you can all check them out. Oh, Chris says, wait, we can't start without Mascha's puppy. Where is he?
Yeah, he's playing with his toys. He had his breakfast, so it's his playtime now. He may still do it. We'll see.
Well, we've got Nancy's dog in the room apparently too.
Yeah.
What's his name or her name?
His name is Bo, and
Bo.
he's buried behind the pillows on the bed.
Okay. What kind of dog is he?
He is a Boykin Spaniel. That is the state dog of South Carolina. They're hunting dogs, and mine doesn't like to hunt, but he does love the water.
Is he a small dog? Because I can't see him.
Well,
Or,
they're supposed to be 35 to 40 pounds, and I have a big one. He's 50 pounds. He's chocolate brown with gold eyes, and he's asleep behind the pillow. So hopefully he stays quiet.
there's Chappie.
Yeah,
Hi, Chappie.
I miss my dog, my Chihuahua Pearl. She used to hide behind the pillows, and she would actually even crawl inside the pillowcase propped up at the head of my bed and think that she was hiding from me, that I couldn't see her with her tail wagging, hanging out of the pillowcase, standing in there next to the pillow. It was the funniest thing.
Oh, that's funny.
So I see B from Ikali Sunflower
Hi,
just came
B.
in, and Neem from Essence 818.
hello, Jan, Chris.
Welcome. So we're 6 minutes in. We're past the tea and the dog state status. So might as well start. I'm curious to know how you each discovered or I'm assuming that you either believe in reincarnation or were intrigued enough by the concept perhaps to investigate past life regression. And let's start with Mascha. How did you first hear of it or become interested in it?
Well, yeah, I first actually heard of it when I kind of, you hear it here and there, but when I was at my first teacher training, yoga teacher training, and when we were learning Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. So Yoga Sutras of Patanjali is just kind of a yogic text on how to practice yoga, that classic text on practices from the very basic ones to kind of more spiritual, right, which ultimately yoga is the spiritual practice. And there is the third chapter in this book, which is really is a chapter on superpowers, right? And there are a few of the verses that they talked about past lives. I've got another one. I'll just read you what they say. It's just a very short one. From affecting perception of samskara, there arises knowledge of the previous birth. So what it teaches that by becoming aware of the habits of this lifetime and past time through the practices, we become aware and we begin to remember the past lives, so our past lifetimes and past rebirth. So that's how I got very interested in that, and pretty much through the teachings of yoga. Yeah, because before that I thought it was too woo-woo and I couldn't understand it. I didn't remember any. I had actually a few moments now that I know that they were the past lives, some kind of deja vus or meeting people that I never met in my life and just knowing them so well and having some kind of very vivid dreams that felt very true. Now I know that, but then I kind of thought it's just more kind of coincidences that they just happen, Yeah, so that was me. Through the practice of yoga, I got interested in the past life and reincarnation.
Okay, so Nancy, do you want to tell us how you first heard about it or how you first became interested?
When I was 3 years old, I used to tell my grandmother that I didn't know why they always called me by the wrong name. And I wouldn't come to my name. And when she asked me what my name was, I told her it was, if I remember correctly, she said it was Lirin, which basically meant Laura, because I told her, you can call me Laura or you can call me Lirin, don't call me Nancy. This went on for about 3 or 4 years. And I remembered my life. I remembered where I lived. I told her I was 36 years old when I died and that I had drowned. And what Mascha was talking about, the Patanjali's writings about habits in this life. It took me a long time as a Pisces with a Scorpio moon to get over a fear of being in water over my head. And I think it's because I had memories of that when I was little. I could identify plants and birds and things like that at 4 and 5 years old. So that's what she told me. And I remember because We lived on a lot of acreage. We used to raise Tennessee walking horses. We had orchards, and I would always go riding with her on the horses through the orchards. And she said I could identify plants and birds that I shouldn't have known at that age.
Mm.
And so I remember some of that, but it's more I remember her telling me, except I do remember her telling me, my name is not Nancy, and I was named after her.
Mm.
So that's where it started for me, was that in childhood. And I grew up in a family that was so, my mother was a psychic and it frightened her. And I grew up in a family where those kind of things were not weird. It just was part of life, and it was talked about, dreams, all of it.
I think for me, well, I recall pretty early on seeing a movie, a classic movie from the 40s. Of course, I saw it much later because I wasn't born until the 50s. But there was this movie called The Search for Bridie Murphy, which I'll include as a link, a YouTube link below in the notes if anybody wants to watch it. It's available on YouTube. And it is the first, as far as I know, the first account of hypnotic past life regression that was a story written and then turned into a movie about a woman who was put under hypnosis by a sort of a dabbler in hypnosis. And it came out during the course of their sessions that she recalled being a little girl in Ireland, 100 or 200 years previous. But anyway, I was intrigued by that movie, and there was also a discussion in that film and elsewhere as well about Edgar Cayce and some of the trance sessions that he had gone into and things that came forth with him through hypnotic regression, or maybe I don't have the right term there, but under hypnosis. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of the first introduction for me, the first interest in it. And to start off the next round, there was a society or group or institute here in New York, down in Soho, called the Open Space. And they did these catalogs and conducted classes on all manner of metaphysics and yoga and meditation and crystals and healing and all kinds of things. And I remember seeing an advertisement for them on group yoga, past life regressions. And I wasn't sure how that was going to work. But at the time, I felt a little bit uneasy about going to a complete stranger and allowing myself to be vulnerable enough to be hypnotized by someone I didn't know with no witnesses around. So I thought, this might be, I don't know how they're going to do it in a group setting, but this might be an interesting way for me to kind of get my feet wet on this, because it was, you'd sign up for this class. I think it was $40 or something for 2 hours or 3 hours. And there were like 40 people in the group in a big loft. So I wasn't sure how it was going to go or how much I was going to get out of it, but that seemed like a way for me to start. And I can tell you all about the process, but that was kind of my introduction into it in the 80s. So I'll go back to Mascha, and can you talk about your first introduction into your experience? Don't go into the details of the experience, but
into the regression itself, right? The formal regression,
just right? How you found somebody, and
I also wanted to add, with my with the first question, right? How I became interested in past lives. I grew up in a very different family to yours, Nancy, right? So all the kind of the things that I kind of, I could see things when I was a child, and if I would talk to them, I was actually in a way like put in a naughty corner at times as well, you know, especially if I go and collect like herbs and say this is for healing this and this and that, and it will link with my past life anyway. But yeah, so it was very different because I was just looked at by my family and by my cousins like as a crazy child, you know, when I would bring anything up like that. So when I had any visions. But anyway, so to your question, Robin, now my first past life regression, it actually was interestingly very shortly after I got my first tarot deck or first tarot deck. So I would say it was summer of 2016 in Australia. So I would say January, February 2016. And there was a kind of metaphysical fair in Tasmania, in Launceston, and there was one person who was doing past life regressions, and he was highly recommended by people who, he would go there every year. Apparently, I didn't know, it's the first time when I met him, but people that I knew through yoga who he helped with past life regressions, they highly recommended him to me. So what I did, I went to the fair and I booked myself a session with him.
Okay, just before we go to Nancy, I want to welcome in Max Winner and Sue C. and Mystic Misfit. So, Nancy, how did you find or discover the person that helped or led you into your regression?
My baby brother, he was an interesting character. And he was living in Georgia at the time. And he came over to visit me in Texas. And he said, "Hey, Scissor," this is his little nickname for me. He said, "I'm working on my hypnotherapy license and in Georgia, and I need practice clients." And he said, "I want to do a past life regression on you." And so I totally trusted him.
Wow.
And so it was my brother. I'm not sure I would have trusted someone else. And then later, after he moved to Georgia, from Georgia to Texas, he did several on me, several on my friends, while he was getting his licensing here. So that was
how old were you and how old was he?
I was 5. He was 5 years younger than me, and at the time, let's see, my son was about 4, so I would have been about 34. He'd have been 29.
Okay. So that seems like a trustworthy age. I was going to say he wasn't too young or immature or anything like that.
He had been through the military and combat and college, and no, I trusted him, you know.
So you didn't think he was going to give you post-hypnotic suggestions to like stand on your head or behave silly in public or anything like that?
No, because I asked him those questions. I'm like, now would be the time for sibling rivalry, get even stuff. And what he said was, you always have control. If a hypnotherapist suggests something that goes against your nature, you will not do it. So he said the person being hypnotized is always in control. So I trusted that about him. And I mean, we had so many crazy experiences together anyway with the local paranormal society. He gave me the first tarot deck I got to really use. So I'm like, I don't think he could suggest too much that, I don't know. I just trusted him. But he also did tell me, you can't force someone to do something they wouldn't do. So the old cliche of they made me cluck like a chicken. If you wouldn't do that in front of 100 people, you're not going to do it. But if you would, and you don't have a problem doing that, you'd go do it.
Well, that kind of leads me into my share. And I want to welcome another latecomer, Apurva. Welcome. When I went to the one I went to, I wasn't sure. I really wanted it to work. I was very open to it. Okay, I'm going to do my best. I don't know how this is going to work. How is this woman going to hypnotize 40 people at once? How, is it all a sham? Is it going to work? But I thought, I really want to try, and I took with me an amethyst crystal, big chunk of crystal, because I had read, and I'm gonna flip over here to this tab on my computer. It says, amethyst is recognized as a stone of spirituality and contentment. It enhances spiritual awareness and promotes a higher state of consciousness. It's well known for its metaphysical abilities to calm the mind and helps to inspire an enhanced meditative state. So that wasn't the site I went to, but I had read something similar, and that's why I chose the amethyst. And I thought, okay, I need all the help I can get, and totally diving into this. And I went with it, and she went through this process, and she also explained, I thought, how deep of hypnotic trance are we going to be? And she said something like there were like 8 to 10 levels of trance, and that we would probably only be in the first or second level, like the lightest, mildest level. And so that we were going to be totally aware of what was going on, about us in the room. And anytime we wanted to get up and leave or stop it, we would be capable of doing that. So, I mean, I was aware of that, but I also tried to go with all her suggestions. She went through this whole process of counting down from the crown of our head, piece by piece through the body, total relaxation down to the toes and back up, all the energy levels in there, just very slowly. And there was regulated breathing and so on. And then, after a few minutes, we went through, she suggested that we discover a tunnel in the darkness and start to walk slowly through the tunnel. And we walked and walked and walked until we could see a light, an opening at the end of the tunnel. And when we come, it'll be slightly out of focus, but when we come out at the end of the tunnel, out into the light, things would start to come into the focus. And she said, and I'm taking all this with a grain of salt, she said, when you come out of the tunnel, the first thing I want you to do is look at your feet, which I thought was really interesting and odd at the same time. So I looked down at my feet thinking, all right, yeah, I'll look at my feet. And what I saw, my jaw dropped. It just kind of blew me away. I saw footwear on my feet that I've never seen anywhere else in the history of clothing or footwear. These were boots. They were leather boots, red leather boots that came from the foot up to almost to the knee, laced up the front, but they had open toes and open heels. And the sole looked like a flat piece of wood. It might have been leather, but it looked like wood.
Wow.
So it was like red leather stitched to wood with open toes and open heels. And I thought, this is bizarre. I've never seen footwear anywhere in history like this. And even after the fact, I tried to research and think, what culture could this have been from? But the next thing she had us do, she said, no, I want you to step out away from your body and look at yourself, look at your face and look at you from the top down. So I saw myself. I had dark, weathered skin and long, straight black hair in braids. I was a man, and I had sort of, I don't want to say a serape, I think that's the wrong term, but loose clothing in sort of woven colors. And then we moved on from there to the surrounding environment. I was in a meadow with some wildflowers and purple mountains around me. And she said, try to figure out where you are. Well, there was no way for sure of knowing where I was, but the image that I saw of myself resembled people that I have seen, native people, either in South America, like in the mountains in Peru, or in the Himalayas, or in Tibet, because those cultures are very similar in terms of the way they look, their coloring, their hair, the design, the wardrobe, and so forth. So I wasn't quite sure, but I had a sense that it was in South America somewhere in the mountains. the next thing she had us do, we kind of went to this other scene. She said, you know, look at your home, look at where you're living, and I want you to go inside. I want you to describe it. I want you to go inside, find out what your occupation was in that life. So this was a little bit less, you know, some of these I felt like I was sort of reaching for a little bit, and others, I mean, the one with the footwear, just like, wow, that blew me away because that came out of nowhere. The others I felt like, okay, am I really seeing this, or am I imagining it to suit the guide? You know, I'm not sure. But anyway, I saw this little white sort of stucco type house with children running around in outdoors playing, and a little white dog frolicking out front. And I went inside. There was a little wooden table in front of the fireplace, and on the table was a clay pipe, not a smoking pipe, but one that you would play, a musical pipe. Now, I don't know what that said about my occupation, but somehow it was apparently linked up with that object. That was all I got out of that. The next phase was to go to an element or an experience within that life that was very important to you, ritual-wise or whatever. So I saw something very much akin to the Four of Wands in the RWS deck, you know, the four poles. There was an outdoor gathering with lots of flowers and these poles, but the tops of the poles had wheels on them, and the wheels were strung with feathers. So it was all brightly colored, and the wheels were spinning, so the feathers were kind of flying, and it seemed to be some kind of a marriage or a big festival or celebration. So that was kind of my first introduction to past life regression, and it was very strong for me, particularly that initial impression of seeing myself in that footwear and how I was depicted. So, I mean, that was kind of a long-winded way of telling my story, but we can move on to Mascha. Before we do, I want to welcome Simon in. I see he just popped in. And divination. I think we're up to speed. So Mascha.
Yeah, I just wanted to say hello to everyone coming in. So Dee and Simon and Max. I don't think I said hi to Max yet. Yes, mine was quite similar in a way, the beginning of my past life regression. And again, that was a person, hypnotherapy, right? So mine also was done in the form of hypnotherapy. And so what he did, and he had the most beautiful, the most calming voice. And I did it seated on a chair, but very comfortable chair. And he guided me. He began with a lot of breathing emphasis, so slowing down the breath, and similar to what you did, what your practitioner did, guided me through those kind of 10 steps, right? But he also was focusing on the feelings of lightness and joy and relaxation as he was guiding me towards the visualization, or I call it visualization. I don't know the better word, or the memory, I guess, that they tried to initiate out of that guidance. And he asked me, it wasn't the tunnel, but it was more opening the door and going down the steps, right? And then he was counting the steps, and I don't remember how many, but I think he was just watching me. Also, what I really liked, that he said that in the beginning that I could open my eyes at any time, because, well, he knew it was the first time for me. And and I'm in control, similar to what your brother told you, Nancy. Yes, so I was going down the steps, and then you, instead of coming to the end of the tunnel, right? So you just go down all the way down to the steps, and you open the door there. But also, as I was walking down the steps, it almost was like I was walking as me. You know, I had actually red boots in my real life, right? I just wore them on the day, but it looked like my shoes were dissolving as I was going down, down, down. And as I reached that door I was supposed to open, I was barefoot. So so I opened the door, and what I recognized, or what I saw, is a very beautiful, very charming village, right? And I opened the door and I kind of already knew that was my house behind me, and there was a field, and then there was a forest. So I was kind of standing with my house behind me, standing on that field in the direction of the woods of the forest. And so I was barefoot, and I had this very loose clothing, and sort of like linen, cream linen color, and I had long blonde hair, and I knew that it was somewhere, I don't what now is Europe, but I really couldn't recognize the particular place or particular culture or country, because it was, again, the style of the house at that time. I sort of recognized it was way before the 14th, 15th century. So I kind of recognized that by the building style. But yes, and it was such a strong memory. I just knew it was me. And then he was just guiding me to recognize my surroundings, to go to my house. And just like your hypnotherapist again, Robin, he was asking me to not about my job, but what I did, right? What I did in my life, and what I discovered, that actually I was, and that's the connection of that field of forget-me-not and yellow flowers in the direction of the forest. I used to forage, and I used to find all the different herbs and berries to use them as medicine and to help the people in my village. So that was very vivid for me, that I will just go and pick them up. Some of them I will dry, some of them I will cook and make brews in my little kitchen and my little cottage that I had. But also he was guiding me through that lifetime. So once again, the person I remember of me then, it was I was probably somewhere in my mid 20s, maybe very early 30s. But then he guided me through the lifetime to the deathbed when I passed away in that lifetime. So he took me all the way through. But in that lifetime, I pretty much spent my life working with people. I also would remember like laying people down on a kind of on the ground or on the grass right outside, or on a soft blanket, and I would be moving them with my hands to help them with their bodies, so that I remembered. And that's why kind of it explained my what I am now, right? So why I wanted to begin to teach yoga, why I wanted to practice, and why I was always interested in more nature medicines, even when I was a little child, when my family only believed in all the Western medicine. So yeah, and the interesting thing, when I was on my deathbed, I kind of lived that life with my husband and everything, and I was gray, and I was on a deathbed, and I knew when I was going to die, and my husband was by my side. But the thing is that I still need to explore, and this lifetime always comes back and back and back when I meditate or do past life regressions. But I got older, but he stayed the same age when we got married. So that for me is kind of very interesting, that I still need to explore. But yeah, that's a kind of little summary of my first experience with past life regression.
Okay. Before we go to Nancy, I want to welcome in Bijam and Mendy. And I just want to tell everybody in the chat, I appreciate you're all here. I'm not chatting with you typing because I'm afraid the typing on my keyboard will interfere with the sound. But I want to acknowledge that you're all there, and I will try to refer back to the chat if you have questions or anything. If you do have questions, maybe type them in caps so I can see them and find them later, and we can address them. Okay, so we'll move on to Nancy's experience.
The first time, and I remember this vividly, when my brother said, "I want to regress you." I was recently divorced from my son's father, so he was with his dad that weekend. And I went, okay, if anything really weird happens, at least my son is safe, right? And so, my brother went through, and he actually took some rosemary, and he smudged the house, and he did everything he could to make me feel comfortable. He even did a salt circle on the floor because, I was like, what if something comes in? I had all these fears. What if something tries to possess me? you know. So once he allayed my fears, how he did it was he said, I want you to imagine any environment that feels peaceful to you. So he said, if it's inside or if it's outside, and for me, I was outside. And he goes, and now I want you to find some stairs and they're going to lead you down. And so that's what he did. He was counting down in stairs. And I remember I started out outside and it was like, concrete stairs. But the further I got down, the walls were really rough and overgrown with like moss and lichen and stuff. And I get to the bottom of the stairs and he said, there is a reflecting pool at the bottom of the stairs. Look in the reflecting pool and tell me what you see. And I saw a little boy, about 11 years old, and I was wearing robes. And so he's like, where do you live? He was asking questions in this process. So I said, I live in the mountains, and I could see the environment all around me. And there was smoke everywhere. There was a terrible fire. And I could see this picture of this deity that was green and it had a lot of arms. And at the time, I had no idea what this was because this actually put me on a quest to learn about this. And this was kind of emotional. Yeah. And then my brother asked me, because I told him, I said, I'm dying. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. And he says, what time is it? He said, see a calendar, like those pull away calendars. And it was June 1959. Mm-hmm. And from what I know now, I was probably an acolyte in a Buddhist monastery that was burned during all the stuff that went on in Tibet. And it was 4 years later, I walked into a yoga center and they had this huge poster and there was this green deity on it and it was green Tara. I had not seen that consciously in my life, but I walked in and I started crying. I go, I know this. It was really bizarre. So at that time, when my brother was doing this, I knew nothing about the Tibetan culture. And I can remember, though, being one time and seeing the prayer wheel when I was about 12, not knowing what it was, and walked by and spun it. Yeah, so that was a really, and I remember what I was most emotional about was I was born in 1965. And so apparently that was the last life I had experienced, and I had died in 1959. And I have asthma and I have some issues. See, the smoke insulation is what killed me. So it was a strange experience. And I still can't tell that story without getting really emotional about it to this day. And here's the weird part. I had a Lhasa Apso dog at the time. And all I knew is, yeah, they're Tibetan. And I look back in hindsight and go, oh, okay. There were certain things that always attracted me about that culture, although I was not that familiar with it at that time. And I do remember telling, my family growing up that I wanted to be a nun. I mean, I've always been spiritually inclined and always had, 1 foot and most of my mind in the alternative realm and 1 foot over here in reality. So I think that it ties in with that past life. Mm-hmm.
I can see why that would be very emotional, since that was the life closest to the one now. Mm-hmm. I forgot to mention when they took me through, they said, we're going to your first life that you can recall, and then they came up to more recent. They came to the one that was most recent for me too. I did forget to mention also, though, when I was going to tell you were worried about crazy stories when they
Oh, yeah.
when they set me through and I saw my feet. Well, after we did the session, we came out of it, we shared in the group. So other people shared. I thought, oh, some of them are stretching a little. I don't know if they're like making this up or what. One of the gals go, I was in Atlantis and we wore goggles and we were in rooms of crystals. And I thought, okay. But then there was this other woman and she says, I was mortified because when you said, look down at your feet, I was underwater and I looked at my feet and I had webbed feet. And that was, I mean, I thought, oh my Lord, this was not on this planet, or maybe it was on this planet, but it was, some underwater race that we're not familiar with. But I just thought it was really kind of intense that what these people claimed to see. This woman seemed much more in awe or convinced of what she saw than the one talking about the crystals, which sort of seemed I got the impression from her that she was just kind of airy-fairy and kind of like, I don't know, was kind of running with something, whether she'd actually seen it or not. But who am I to judge? Maybe she did see crystals and wear crystal goggles in a room where they process crystals for spiritual use in Atlantis. I don't know. But what was I going to say? Oh, the next one they went to was, they said, okay, you're going to go to your most recent life. And like yours said, find out where you are, where you live. It was hard to tell. It was some suburb in America somewhere. And it was like a stereotypical suburb with it seemed like in the Midwest somewhere with little tree-lined streets. And I was in a little house with a white picket fence. And I thought, oh, how dull and ordinary. And I was walking along the sidewalk looking for signs, because usually there's street signs at the corners or crossroads, and I couldn't find any. And then they go, okay, we want to progress you to your death. So I saw myself very old in a bed in a yellow bedroom, all alone in bed on my deathbed. And then I was surrounded by a circle of figures, standing figures in long black robes. I have no idea what that was all about. And I didn't see too much more of it, but apparently I died, in my old age, alone in this deathbed, surrounded by these figures in black. And I don't know, I felt almost like less convinced in that one that I was experiencing it than in the first one. That first one was a real eye-opener and jaw-dropper for me. The other ones I felt like, okay, maybe I'm not as deep in a trance and I'm, more kind of like just going along with the guide and kind of visualizing things that aren't really there in order to please her or something. I don't know. But that was the most recent one. And I don't know. I guess I don't really have any more to say about that. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure where to go from here unless I pass back to Mascha if you have something you want to add or bring up or...
Yeah, well, for me, it's interesting, when I was trying to do the past life regression of my most recent lifetime or a few, nothing would come up. And my understanding from yogic perspective about that is that I am not ready yet. So I think we can discover and remember the past lifetime that we actually have the capacity to deal with in this lifetime. Or if we have some kind of trauma, so we can also remember that so we can heal in this lifetime. Well, for me, like that example that you inhaled the smoke in the past lifetime that killed you, Nancy, that in this lifetime you have asthma as the knowing that it sort of brings some kind of closure and healing, right? And like drowning, right? Also explaining that fear, and what I think, well, I just with my most recent lifetimes, I don't know when they were, because nothing would come up. And that's interesting, because for me, that the lifetime that I described, the one that I think is sort of 14th, 15th century, it always comes up. And when I do my life past different regressions, that one will be the strongest that comes up, and then some others ones, but they are not as obvious. So for me, that the healer perspective has also been very, very helpful, also from that yogic perspective, to recognize how tracing my karmas, which is the actions that I performed in the past life, and some skaras, which is the habits that I developed in my past lives, how I can become aware and use that knowledge that I gained over the lifetime. And again, I've done a few other past life regressions, so that the accumulated knowledge of the past lives that we can use in this lifetime. So and again, I'm just talking about here from the teachings of yoga and what I experienced because of that. And when we talk about also those habitual patterns that we can remember from the past life, they also, because I see in the chat some people think that they're not susceptible to hypnosis. From my understanding, that can be achieved, from yogic perspective, right? So if you look at Yoga Sutras and the first statement that I read, that through the practices we can learn to remember our previous birth. And those practices, they in yogic language, if we know 8 limbs of yoga, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, which means the concentration practices. So if we focus, and I think that's hypnosis is really, it's a combination of concentration and meditation. Dhyana is meditation, and then contemplation. So we can remember those lifetimes through those practices without needing the hypnosis. If for some of us who are not susceptible to hypnosis, or feel a little wary about going under that, or trusting the person who could guide you through that regression. Yeah. So and I think also in terms of rebirth, from my understanding, is that same as we can remember our past life, if we practice enough, we can actually almost predict our next life based on our attachment in this lifetime. But again, I'm kind of going into this Yoga Sutras book on superpowers, right? But they're the teachings there in this ancient text.
I feel almost disappointed, but at the same time blessed that both my experiences were pleasant ones and not traumatic ones. I'm not sure what to take away from that karma-wise, but I can't complain that both of them were okay and didn't traumatize me compared to things like you've experienced. But have both of you done this more than once? Because I've only done it the one time. So Mascha, you have, and
3 times formally.
Okay, Nancy?
I've done it several times, like with my brother, and then years ago when I was learning all about Reiki and Theta and quantum touch and all these healing modalities I learned. Some of the things that we would practice on would be healing the past life traumas. And like Mascha had touched on, because I had 2 that were so strong that involved the lungs and not being able to breathe, drowning and smoke inhalation. And they did a lot of energy work on the lungs. So I had done some in there. And then I've actually taken the same technique my brother taught me, use a little mugwort salve on the 3rd eye and on my heart. And I've set the intention for dreaming to glean anything from a past life that might be important, that's affecting this lifetime. And that has been an interesting and powerful exercise, actually.
Nancy, did you say that you have asthma or some kind of breathing issues in this life?
Yes. And it has gotten better as I've gotten older. But in my 30s, and particularly after moving to Texas with all of the allergens here, I was having terrible time with asthma. And so it's gotten better because it's something that I've worked on energetically, nutrition, and those type thing, and done the Chinese work, with with all the meridians, acupuncture, all of that. But it has been a lifelong challenge. And anytime I feel remotely like I'm being suffocated, I still get that a little bit of a freak out. And I'm sure that that's what it's connected to. And those two experiences were the ones that left the indelible mark on me. And I think in this lifetime and in my memory of the drowning and the fire, because some of the others that I discovered, like dying in a car crash in the late 20s in a, when the cars back in those days, that doesn't bother me. I don't think I have any repercussions from that one. So I don't know.
So you think the spiritual work has actually helped your physical being?
Yes, I am 100% convinced of that. Yes. I mean, I'm walking today because of energy work. So I'm a firm believer in that, because I was nearly paralyzed in a martial arts accident, and I know the power of all of that. So, if it could help me walk again, surely it's helped my breathing,
Oh, there's another fabulous old movie I want to recommend if you can ever track it down. It's this movie Ellen Burstyn did in the late 70s or early 80s called Resurrection, where that has spiritual healing in it. And she had like a near-death experience, and she came back from it and then became a healer. It's a fantastic movie if you can find it. Sorry, go ahead.
Robin, in this lifetime, I did have that whole near-death experience. And I was 24 years old at the time. Literally, the tunnel, the whole bit. So I forgot what point I was going to make. It was connected to that because I had seen, I saw that movie after that and thought, and I don't know if because of having had that experience helped me know rather than believe that the universal energy is there, and it's a matter of tapping into that wave. I think that's why we have precognition. This is why I also think sometimes that the predictive tarot works. I think you're tapped in an energy wave, because there is technically no time, right? No past, no present, just this, just this present moment. Sorry, I was getting a call and I lost my train of thought there. But I wondered if that's why I know rather than believe in the subtle energies and how they are effective. I'm not sure. That's a good question.
Nancy? Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I also had
Wait, hold on. We're having a sound issue, and I don't know what it is.
I think it's gone now.
I think, okay. Sorry,
yes,
go ahead.
My first near-death experience was when I was probably about 3 or 4, when I fell off the bridge into the river and almost drowned. And then my uncle pulled me out. And then the other two were when I was walking to school. I was probably about 10 in Belarus, so it was snowing, it was very slippery, and I was walking after the car almost hit me. So it kind of stopped almost like just, I don't know, an inch away from me. And then there was that person that picked me up, just in front of the car, put me on a safe position, and then just vanished. And I just thought it just kind of a real person, maybe just was running to catch a bus or something. But then I almost got hit by the train, because in Belarus, again, train tracks, they were not very safe, and you have to cross, and I got caught and I fell and the train almost hit me. But then that same person, well, in my vision, is the same person, picked me up, put me on the platform and just disappeared. And so I that's kind of when I began to realize that there is that kind of energy that can protect you as well. That so I just wanted to share that.
Nancy, did you say you wanted to share something about your son's experience or not? I mean, it's up to you.
I would love to share this if we have time.
Sure.
When my son, my ex-husband, my son's father, was an airline pilot, and we owned a private plane. And when my son was little, he loved airplanes, but he would scream and have a fit if you tried to put him in it to go flying. But he loved planes. And the first time we actually talked him into getting in the plane to go up flying with us, he was about 2.5, 3 years old. And he kept saying, no, plane go boom in the water. No, 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 plane go boom in the water. I was like, that's weird. His father was like, no, you can sit in my lap. You're in control. He let my son hold the controls. You're safe. You're in control. And that helped my son be okay. Well, my son had all these dreams for years. And he would say, Mom, I know I was in a plane and I died. And my name was Clive. And I died in the Pacific. And he said, and I was Australian. My son is an artist today. So when you see this, he was 6 when he drew this. I'm going to try to get this in the camera.
Let me put you on full screen if I can.
Because I want to point out some things here.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, where am I here? He drew this when he was 6 years old. This is the USS Arizona. Over here, you have a little man in the water screaming help that's being shot down by this plane, even though it's a modern F-16. Now, he went on to win an award for this in first grade. So it was shown in the, we lived in Fort Worth at the time. It was shown in the local community center where they have all the conventions and stuff. And they had this art show and they were giving out the ribbons. And all the World War II vets were standing around this picture, kind of freaked out. So they asked my son, how do you know this? He goes, I was there. He was 6, right? This went on for a long time. He drew this. I have so many pictures like this.
Wow.
And he remembered his name. He said, Mom, I was a tail gunner. I shot down. I drowned. He said he talked about the other person in the plane burned, but that he drowned in the water. And to this day, my son also doesn't like to be in water over his head. So this went on for a very long time. He knew details as a child. And then he even knew the name of the battle that he died in. So about 2 years ago, he said, Mom, I'm going to do some research. So he started looking and he started combing through all the archives. All he had was a battle, which was real easy because he found the date of it. And he had a first name. And he found himself. And he was right. The guy's name was Clive. And my son just asked me not to give the too personal of information because he said he's not sure he's ready to talk about that. But we found him, and he was a surgeon, and he worked the guns, just like my son always said that he was the tail gunner, and he died in that battle. They don't know exactly what day, but everyone in their entire squadron was wiped out in that battle. And my son said after he found all that information, he said he did a memorial service for Clive, and he stopped having dreams about that life. And he said, Mom, sometime maybe I'll come on your channel and talk about it to you. And so I will keep y'all posted because, I wrote everything down. He's an only child. So, anytime he came out with something like that, I wrote it down. And like he started talking in full sentences at the age of 1.5. He was about 2 years old, a little over 2 years old. One day he was playing at the kitchen table with his little car. He'd run the car on the table. And he said, Mom, do you remember when we were angel babies together? And you went first so you could be my mom. And I chose Dad too. And he went right back to playing. And boy, over the years after his father and I divorced, I had to remind myself, he chose Dad too. I apparently was a part of that. So because of his experiences being little, I wrote everything down, and he had a dream journal. I have all of those. I went in the studio earlier to find these pictures to pull out, and I was looking at some of the dream journal entries. He had a lot of dreams or nightmares about crashing a plane, and that finally stopped for him as an adult after he did his own memorial service for that.
Wow.
I don't know.
I just want to pop in the chat here a minute and check. Jen Balanced Tarot just joined us. Simon wanted to recommend to you, Nancy, a book called Soul Survivor. Simon, if you happen to have the author's name to pop into the chat, that might be helpful. And somebody said you were giving them goosebumps with your story. So it really is. This is. I wish Sandra were here because I know she's really into the spooky stuff, and I bet she'd be thrilled.
Well, I mean, this is why I pulled these things out, because this was the recurrent theme. He drew tanks and all of these things from World War II as a child, and you know, Mom is a pacifist, right? And he's drawing all of these, like all of the artillery from that time period. I have so many of his drawings. He's a professional artist now, so you know, I think it's pretty good for a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
He's a way better artist than I am. But this was such a common theme in his childhood, repeatedly.
Let me.
And he still doesn't like to fly.
Yeah, and it's amazing how the memories are so vivid, that they're just so detailed that I'm blown away.
Well, Mascha, you might be able to relate to this. I mean, I've seen stories about how they choose the Dalai Lamas, that they test these children as to what they remember from their belongings from a previous existence, and they lay out these special objects, and they choose ones that they remember belong to them from the life before.
I've read that. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you both if you have any advice, because a lot of people in the chat seem intrigued about going through past life experience. And I probably should have invited Jonathan Daly to participate in this, although he does past life regression through card reading, which I don't really comprehend how that works. And I was focused more on hypnotic regression, which is why I approached the two of you. But Nancy, I can understand how you trusted your regressor because it was your brother. You had an established relationship. And I safeguarded myself because I was in a room with 40 people. So I was, Mascha, I'm not sure how you chose. I don't know whether I glossed over or how you chose yours, but do either of you have any advice for people that want to do this in terms of safeguarding themselves to pick the right person?
Oh, I do. Because I met a nutcase in Dallas, Texas. And when I say a nutcase, I'm not kidding. I think that, and I'm definitely not going to give her name here, but I feel like that very unethical. And she would plant memories in people. And since then, she has had numerous complaints lodged against her. She was a licensed therapist and she was a hypnotherapist. And so my number one thing is you look, because any of your licensing boards and medical boards will have a department that handles complaints. And even if those complaints are dismissed or settled, it'll still say in there, just like with, your legal, like your bars, they keep a history of any complaints filed and were there any disciplinary actions taken. I think that's critical, because if you have people like this woman I'm thinking of, and she was teaching hypnotherapy school too, it was definitely not ethical. You want to know that. And also, number one, go with your gut instinct. Trust your instinct on that, but look at your licensing boards. In order to be a practicing hypnotherapist, I think in probably most states, you have to be licensed. So I would say just be careful of the weekend hypnotherapist at your local New Age shop. And that's all.
I had actually considered, I'm still afraid to do it, but I had a childhood experience that I related recently in one of the hashtag challenges when I was about 3 or 4 years old. And I've often thought, oh, it would be good for me, or give me more information if I was hypnotically regressed, to see that or recount that more clearly. But I'm still afraid of laying myself vulnerable to a solo hypnotherapist, somebody that I don't know and I don't know if I can trust. So I'm not ready to go there yet. Although if I find somebody in New York City that I trust, that's been to one they trust, I might consider that, but I don't quite know how to proceed in finding one that will work for me. But I'll take that note from you about checking out
check them out,
their records, their history.
Yeah, that's a great advice. Yeah, and I don't know, Jen probably can help us here. Jen from Australia, Science to Soul Tarot and Transformation with Jen. What was the licensing rules for the hypnotherapist in Australia, Jen? I personally, I went on recommendation by the people that I really trusted when I approached that practitioner, and also I did have a talk with him and a discussion before he actually took me through the past life regression. So I really gut feeling. I felt very safe around him, and he made me feel very safe. And he gave me, though, again, as your brother, as I mentioned in the beginning of our chat, that he did tell me that I am in control and I can open my eyes at any time, and so I felt very, very safe. But I think initially, probably because of the people that I really trust, and I know, and I trust their knowledge and experiences that they had with the past life and yoga practices and other spiritual practices that they practice at the time, I just knew that this person will be safe for me from the start. I don't know, she has no idea. Yeah, I don't know. I need to check that as well. Yeah, about hypnotherapist in terms of licensing and yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to mention Simon found the author of that book, Soul Survivor by Andrea Leininger. But I see, Nancy, that you caught that. But
I caught it.
In case anybody listening didn't catch it or isn't following the chat room, I just wanted to announce it out loud. So not quite sure where to go from here, unless there are other... Have either of you had any experience with past life regression through card reading? Because I don't know anything about that. Somebody in the chat did mention that she does it. I think, was it Whispers Healing with My Ancestors and Asha Light Eagle? Welcome. I hadn't seen her before. I don't know. But it's hard to explain that in a few characters in a chat, but maybe if anybody wants to know more, they might reach out to her. I don't know. If you have anything else you want to discuss on this, I think I've about run the course on what I had in mind to cover. So I don't know where to go from here. And I don't see any capitals for questions in the chat. If anybody in chat has questions about this that they want to put in all caps, do it now or forever hold your peace until the next life. Because, yeah.
Can I share a strange experience where
Sure.
I think I don't even know how to describe this, and this is not really something I've discussed publicly before, but here goes. Sounds like it's crazy. In 2013, I went to Scotland, and I went to Culloden battlefield. And as I was sitting out on that battlefield, I had the weirdest experience of my entire life. And I don't know if I glimpsed, okay, I don't even know how to put this. I'm sitting there, all of a sudden, everything got really, really muffled, just really quiet. And it was almost like looking through wavy glass. Then all of a sudden, I was standing on that battlefield with bodies all around me. So it was after the battle. And then I look and I kind of know that I'm also on the other side of the glass, so to speak. I could see that I'm sitting there, and instantly I came out of it. So I don't know if I went through I don't know if I was experiencing something from a past life of myself, if it was a DNA memory, because I am predominantly Scottish in my DNA, or what
a dimensional porthole or something.
I have no idea. But I go back to the tour bus because I was with the tour while they all went in the center where you have the welcome center and they have all the films. I didn't even go in there. I just went straight to the battlefield. I was out there completely by myself. So then I went back to the tour bus and I had this kind of shell-shocked look on my face. And Richard, the tour guide, he looked at me and goes, "Oh, I've seen this look before." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Either the ancestors whispered in your ear, or they tapped you on the shoulder, or they crossed you over." And I just sat down and went, I don't know what happened. And I just sat there really quiet. And he came by and he patted me on my shoulder. He goes, "You're not crazy." And that's all he said to me. And I just sat there because I don't know if that was, to this day, I don't know if I was experiencing a glimpse into a past life or if I went through some kind of I don't know. I'd love to hear anybody's comments on that. If y'all have ever had anything like that happen.
I just want to share for everybody in the chat room that you expressed some dis-ease about sharing these things with people. You said, "I don't want to sound like I'm crazy." I want everybody out there to know there's no shame in any of this, and nobody's crazy, and everybody, we're all supportive of everybody, and just know we're all there for you, and don't feel like you're crazy or whatever. I'm not expressing that well, I don't think, but
I hold the belief that our accumulated actions of this lifetime will affect next lifetime, of the past lifetime, affect this lifetime. So they're accumulated karmas, right? And tendencies and talents that we have from the previous lifetimes, trust me, great with our hearts and souls into this lifetime. So that's my belief. So, and it's based on what I've learned through my practices. And
Does anybody else have anything they want to, any thoughts they want to wind up with? I see nothing in all caps, so I guess there are no questions from the chat. So if either of you have anything left you want to say about this, please do. Otherwise, we'll call it a day for now. And I want to thank you both for participating and sharing with people.
I enjoyed it. Thank you, Robin. And thank you for everyone here. I didn't get to interact because I'm not used to this live thing, but
okay. And of course, if either of you want to share more on your own channels, maybe this is a kickstart to do so. And I'm sure you have a lot of people here that would love to tune in and hear more. So until next time, folks, thank you all very much. And gals, please hang around after I end the broadcast so we can have some closing thoughts together.
Okay.
And bye, everybody, and we'll see you all soon.